Hi, everybody. So we're now to our penultimate session of the day, and we're going to talk about Games Careers Week, how it came about, what it's for, how we pulled it together, what's happened, and what we might do next year. And so I'm going to introduce to you my co-founders of Games Careers Week, and in fact, in parallel, the original creators of Games Careers Week. Andy, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. So my name is Andy Driver. I am the operations manager at Grads and Games. So we are a non-profit organisation that helps students become employable for the video games industry. So we do that in a number of different ways, trying to further the links between academia and industry. And yeah, I guess we're very, very proud to be joining up alongside Rick and Declan and put all this together.
Thanks, Andy. Declan, I'm sure lots of people know you as they do Andy.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, yeah, no, I'm Declan, the CEO of Into Games. We are here as an organisation to help people across the entire careers ladder. So right from kind of primary all the way up into, finding their first career and maybe transitioning from another one. And we provide support in a whole bunch of different ways, from kind of information to opportunity providing to, things like kind of mentorship and events. So yeah, and we've been operating for about 2 and a bit years. So we're quite young as an organization, I guess. Yeah, it's been a crazy ride the last 4 months, putting together Games Careers with you guys, and it's been a real pleasure.
Oh, it has. Andy, do you want to just quickly talk about how the idea for a national festival came about from your perspective before we ask the same question of Declan?
Sure. Well, yeah, we've Grads and Games has been running for, just finishing our 11th year, and we've got a number of kind of initiatives and events which are at the end of these kind of long initiatives, which happen generally at roughly at the same time every year, usually around this time, around Easter. We are also very much aware that BGI run GamesEd at this time of year. That's why we're here. And that lots of other people run the same kind of things. And I think the original idea from my point of view was, well, we're all doing events and doing really great things that help roughly the same kind of audience, whether it be the students themselves, the educators, the studios, the industry. We're all trying to help all of those, and rather than competing against each other, going, well, I want to do it all myself. We want to be the ones who make big changes. I mean, maybe the reality was, well, why don't we work together? Why don't we say, well, I run events around the same time as you do. Why don't I cross-promote yours? You cross-promote mine. We've all got roughly the same audience. And actually, if we work together, we might be able to make everyone will benefit from it. And I think that was the initial nugget of an idea. And then it kind of rolled from there, and it's become a much bigger thing where we've gone, well, rather than just BGI Into Games and Grads and Games running events, why don't we try and get everyone to run an event? So yeah, I think that was the initial nugget of an idea from our point of view as well. Actually, yeah, we want to collaborate more, and we can achieve more by working together with everybody. So that was the kind of the first initial nugget of everything.
Fantastic. And what about you, Declan? Where did the idea come from?
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky enough to be working in an industry where there's lots of great initiatives that are happening all the time, whether they're being done by studios themselves or being done by organizations like us that have small resources. That's the other side. We all do lots of important, quite big work, but then when you just peel the layer back from probably each one of our organizations, you're like, wow, you're just doing it with you and a couple of other people, and and on a shoestring. And it is really important work. We all know it's the it's the fastest growing creative industry in the UK, and it's an industry to be proud of, you know. And yet there isn't enough information about it out there for parents or for young people or for educators. And we've all done things, you know, as individual organizations to do something about that. And it kind of felt like we needed some kind of event to create a critical mass, where we could pull all our resources together, you know, whether that be people, whether that be events, whether that be, you know, press, whatever it was, and have that single point in the year where we could launch projects, or we could celebrate projects that had happened, and we could provide information across the country, nationally, to all of those key stakeholder groups. So those parents, those teachers, in a you know, really focused way, and then use that to kind of kickstart the rest of the year. You know, for us to do our regular program work, which we all do a lot of. So it really made sense for us to come together and to, you know, raise everybody up, you know, through that, including ourselves, because as I say, we're all still small organizations. There's no, you know, there's no big players in terms of what we're doing, you know, and we all want the same thing. So, you know, as Andy was saying, you know, it didn't make sense to compete. There's enough space here to do this. So, you know, it really felt like a great thing to do. And, you know, working together is always better, isn't it? You know, it always leads to better outcomes. And I think, you know, this is total proof of that, you know. And I'll add, you know, one of the big things that people have said time and time again when we've presented this to, you know, to studios and to you know, kind of wider audiences, is like, wow, you know, it's so good seeing people come together, so good seeing these organizations come together and do this thing, you know, to you know, for the greater good. And it's interesting because, you know, it's odd that that's a surprising thing to do, but maybe sometimes it is. You know, but I'm really glad that we did it. It's been great.
Well, no, I totally echo that, and I think from the BGI perspective, I mean, we've run GamesEd now. This is the third one, and after each one of them, the both the steering group, but also my trustees, or then advisory board before we became a charity, looked at the outputs, and I think what was really clear was that GamesEd is a really good forum for policymakers in studios and in educational institutions to talk about how we improve the situation. But the big glaring thing that you can't do if you're just talking to the course leaders and to the studio heads and their heads of HR is it's really hard to then talk to the public. And so we had decided to fund a project where we would signpost the incredible diversity of schemes that are already out there, that aren't cross-promoting enough. And so when Andy called, and then literally within, I think it was 5 days, Declan then called to have a very similar idea of coming together to collaborate. It just felt like absolutely the right thing to do. 3 neutral organizations, sort of unaffiliated, independently governed, that are interested in exactly the same goal, that could start to build a program which involved, that obviously helped us promote the things that we're doing, but also could bring in that rich tapestry of all of the other schemes out there. And so we started to put feelers out to Yuki, to Tiger, to Next Gen, to Women in Games, to Creative Assembly, to Sumo Digital, of course. And what we found was an instant, yeah, absolutely. We need to work together. I mean, for me, it's been a very inspirational process, and I think it's really good sort of stepping back now to kind of talk a bit about what's Games Careers Week for. I mean, what's the message that we're trying to get across to the public? Andy, do you want to pick that one up?
Sure. I think first of all, just, you know, I think as you were just saying, I think one of the first things we probably thought of was that we probably don't need to reinvent the wheel. All of these schemes and all of these things already exist. It's just that not everybody knows about them. So by bringing this one thing together, we can hopefully everybody can then start being aware. People can start going on on this kind of pathway of do this, now do this, now do this, and they benefit, and everybody benefits from it. I suppose that's going to be a big part of what Games Careers Week is for. But I think we probably identified that if we can pull this off and make it into this big industry thing, we might be able to then start addressing, I guess, some of the bigger issues with regards to the games industry. One would be regards to, I suppose, stereotypes that games is a real job. That's one of the big blockers, I think, isn't there? That there's a stereotype that it's not, for parents, games is not a real job. It's go and study and get a real job like a doctor or a lawyer. But actually showcasing that there are lots of people who make full careers out of making the games that you're playing right now, and they're paid quite well. It's a proper job. It's a full career. So it's kind of opening that up. And I guess when you start to open that up and you start to make that more accessible to more people, what you can then really start to do is start addressing some of the diversity issues with regards to the workforce of the games industry, where if you have more people having access to these careers, you then invariably are able to diverse the talent pool a little bit further by proxy. And I think those are some of the real big issues that I hope that we can start to impact, and it will be long term. It will be longer term impact. It's not going to be something that changes next week. But by growing Games Careers Week and having a positive impact, those are some of the bigger issues that I think if everybody pulls in together, we can change. And if we all do that, everybody benefits. So it's getting studios, educators, schools, organisations like ours to all think of the longer term benefit for everybody. You may not see an immediate return in whether it be monetary or hiring someone or something. Actually, longer term, you will benefit as an organisation. I think that's probably the most exciting thing for me is really starting to think bigger picture and longer term.
Yeah, triggering change. Declan.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, I think that Games Careers Week is the perfect kind of vehicle for kind of big national work. And it's a point in the year where you could have the ear of most schools in the UK potentially, to tell them something or to give them some resource or to open up that conversation. And I think as a forum, it's a really powerful tool as well, and we had one of our was, I mean, it's probably something to talk about when we talk about what we want to do different next year, but we had one of our main spokespeople this year was by complete accident, and was Sarah, one of the parents who had an experience with her child and trying to find out information about the game sector because they said they want to get into the games, and she just couldn't for the life of her find enough information about that online, which of course proves the point that we were trying to say earlier on anyway about why Games Careers Week should exist. But that kind of we were introduced to her because I think she'd mistakenly booked one of our to our town hall event, which was an event we ran before Games Careers Week, like a month before or something, where we'd opened up. I guess we thought we'd opened up because we were like, okay, let's open this up to all of industry and education as well, to kind of have this open space to talk about what Games Careers Week should look like. And of course, actually, we missed out a massive group of people there in that town hall, which was, obviously the parents and actually the learners as well, and as I say, probably one to talk about in a moment. We talk about what we want to do differently, but Sarah had snuck in there because I think she thought it was Games Careers Week or something. I think she thought, because we'd been titled the Games Careers Week Town Hall. And she was, as I said, a parent with a very clear problem that Games Careers Week could potentially solve. And, that was really lovely to see that kind of discourse happening, and for industry to be speaking directly to a parent, in that kind of space. I'd love to see more of that as we go forward. And I think that, we're in such of the early days of this, we pulled it together so quickly. It's been born from some really good ideas and some obvious insights that we all have, because we've been working and doing this for a while now. But I think that the exciting thing about this is how it's going to change and grow and be different next year, but based maybe more on the kind of people we wanted to reach, so those parents and those learners, rather than industry and education, which is what we kind of based this one on. I feel like we focused a lot on that because that's naturally probably where we're all a bit more attached to. That's kind of a bit of our background.
Exactly. We're going to talk about ambitions for 22 and maybe our thoughts in just a little bit, so don't steal our thunder.
Sorry, go for it. Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, I think Sarah was emblematic. This is the lady from Brighton who had tried to find that information and had taken her child to an event that they thought would teach her daughter about careers in games, and it ended up being this is a video game controller, this is a games console, and it was kind of talking down to somebody who was really passionate about wanting to make games. And it just reminded me so much of what we see in the National Video Game Museum, in the galleries, most weekends, and our crew will say, had another person who came into the galleries, obviously when we're open, and said, I didn't know people made video games. We're like, yes. But they just don't realize that there is this world-class sector that is on their doorsteps. And that Britain is one of the biggest games development hubs in the world, 5th or the 6th largest, depending on the year. And that the economic viability, the tying into the STEM or the STEAM agenda, where you've got educators up and down the country, particularly in secondary schools, really struggling to engage young people in keeping studying the skills that we know inside the industry are absolutely crucial if you want to make games or even to market games. And so it just felt as if we had an opportunity to talk to a very different audience rather than ourselves. And I think the other perspective I had is that seeing, two things. One is you kind of got to reach people early, because there are so many points of friction for people of colour, for parents of female children, for women, for those with disabilities, for LGBTQ plus people, for those from disadvantaged backgrounds, where they're not spoken to in the right way, or the role models don't represent them, where those are points of friction where people just start to question that nagging doubt of, I'm really passionate about video games, but is there a career there for me? And if I answer that question, is there a career for a white middle-class male? Well, yeah, self-evidently there is, but there is definitely a career for people from lots of different diverse backgrounds. And I think we kind of have missed an opportunity in talking to ourselves, violently agreeing about how we need to be more diverse, and actually taking it out to the public. And so I think that's really what we've tried to do. So if I can move us on to the next question, how did we put it together? I mean, I don't know. I mean, there are some who are slightly on the inside track who know that this has been quick, but should we just quickly run through about what we and all the other organizations, and it's over 80 organizations have been involved in Games Careers Week, what we've managed to do in a very short amount of time. Andy, I can see that grin on your face. Tell us.
A lot of Zoom calls. That's how we've done it. Well, it was initial conversations must have been about November, I reckon.
Yeah, late November.
Yeah, but they were literally just initial. Oh, this sounds like a good idea. Let's figure something out. And then it probably wasn't until just after Christmas, was it, that it became a little bit more real, I guess, in terms of, this is kind of an outline. These are some potential dates of when it could be, and actually how it could work. And we then went out and brought a steering group together, didn't we, of organisations who we then ran it past, and everyone else said, yes, it's a great idea. And then it was a case of going, well, there's certain things that we need to have in place to be able to launch this properly. One, big thing being the website, which was then a case of well, we're going to launch this thing in 3 months. We need to build a brand new website for it. So I know that Rick, you were back and forth with the developers a lot on that.
Yeah, no, it was a big deal. I mean, I think the other thing that people should know on the outside is that, and for all those students, this is going to sound like a lot of money, but it really isn't to put on a national festival. We've run the whole thing for a budget of under 20,000, and that the BGI had already identified that it wanted to build this website, so we funded that. But really, the festival itself, if you take the website out, that's £7,500. So I mean, I'm sounding like I'm patting myself on the back, and in a way I am. But I think what we've done with the 3 organisations and all of the partners is we've just done this we've bootstrapped it. And just through passion and commitment, we've got this up into the air. And what inspired me was just when we ran the town. So Declan has this wonderful idea of running town halls in January, right, Declan?
Yeah.
And the response was just amazing. Do you want to talk about the town halls? We have a bit already.
Yeah, totally. You know, I mean, I think that we'd all agreed that we wanted it to be something that was outside of just the 3 of us. You know, and actually in the long run, something that was very much kind of generated by the community, you know, in the long run, that we just stewarded, I guess. And there was only so much of that you could do when you haven't got much time. You have to make very quick decisions, don't you? And just like yes, no, and it's great to make big community decisions, but you need time and you need a forum that's been there for a while, and you know, and a process of making those decisions for those things to happen quite quickly, you know. And we just didn't have that. You know, we had to say yes or no to things extremely fast, and that was fine, you know, for the first year. And obviously we'll grow that as it goes forward. But those town halls were just really instrumental in well, initially getting more people to know about what it was that we were doing, without just putting a website out there and going, look, here we go, look, who wants to get involved? You know, there was some element of, okay, you know, we want this to be a conversation. We want to get your opinions. We want to see what, you know, you guys think about this, as much as, you know, our thoughts, which, you know, we you know, we can only be we're going to have as much of as our experience. There's a wealth of experience out there of people that have done things more, you know, better than us, and will continue to be. So I think we want to continue that principle, certainly. But it was it was fantastic. I mean, I just like to go back to saying how important it was that you and the BGI had done so much thinking about that website in advance, you know. And I think it's one of those things where the stars aligned, you know, because I think if you hadn't have done that thinking, if you hadn't have had some budget to do that website at that particular time. And I remember, because I think we started off saying that it would be a good vehicle to promote the Pathway website. Yeah. You know, so it wasn't, you know, the website was a separate thing, I think, at that point. And we would have had a separate website to do, you know, so it would have, and that was, you know, you called that, Rick, you said, you know, actually, let's it's the same thing. Let's make that happen. And I think that was really the turning point, I think, in terms of it being a much bigger thing, and us being able to make that happen. But I you know, really full credit to you for making that decision. I think it was a really, really good one, and really put the boosters on that, you know. And then also we had the PR company as well, who you guys had a previous relationship with, and these things just kind of fell into place at the right time. And I think if any one of those things hadn't necessarily happened, then it would have been impossible for us to put this together so quickly, you know. And so yeah, I guess I'm, you know, a believer in fate sometimes, and this time was very much a fateful thing for us to happen and grow, you know. So
well, there's something zeitgeisty about a festival about the fastest growing creative industry in the UK at a time where most industries have tanked, let's be honest, that has been growing at these record rates, coming together to talk about diversity. When obviously that's the other big zeitgeist sort of subject, and I mean in the news for all the wrong reasons today. But I think we as a sector, and I don't just mean us 3 organisations, I mean all of us involved in in Games Careers Week in its many different forms. I think, you know, we really have got the bit between our teeth. We are trying to make change on the ground. I want to talk a bit more about that PR angle, because it was a really good alignment of stars, exactly as you say. It was like the world evolving the eye in 5 different places, in 5 different designs, all at the same time, because it was just necessary. It had to happen. I put a call out to a woman called Fiona Chow, who's just the most inspirational PR person, who worked with me on the Games Up campaign, where we got lots of studios behind the drive to win video games tax relief. And she did an amazing job back in the company she worked at just reaching out to mainstream media and taking a story about an industry that back in 2008 was, I mean, it wasn't a pariah, but it was hardly, you know, the kind of success story that we can now chat about, because a lot of the media perception of games were really negative. And she just broke straight through those barriers, just through sheer chutzpah and momentum. And she got that coverage all across the media. And while we've had a much shorter run-up with giving her a very, very small budget, and she brought in this great PR company called Shift 6, and we're very grateful for all of their work. But actually, we've had some really good PR. So last week we were in the Sun, and I mean, I kid you not, that I think they've got about 8 million people look at the page that Games Careers Week was on. So I mean, that's a big deal. And we've all been doing interviews in lots of radio and getting into lots of specialist magazines. So I think that company has done a really good job in a very short amount of time. I mean, we literally gave them the brief in the middle of January, and they've had to kind of pick up and run and get this out there. And I think that they've laid a foundation for what we're going to do next year. But before we get on to 2022, let's just talk a bit about what we've managed to do. I mean, I've got some scores on the doors, but I would love to start with, so Declan, I think you've taken the most recent look at the social reach for Games Careers Week. What does that look like? Yeah,
so we were on, I think this is I checked this kind of yesterday, so it might be more now, but we were on kind of 1.5 million in reach, social reach. You know, I mean, that's it. You take that as you will. I mean, you know, I think those kind of figures are often used by, you know, present company of Shift 6, PR company, you know, accepted, but like often used as a kind of a big figure to justify success, when sometimes maybe, you know, you should look at other figures. But however, you know, we set out to have that social reach, I think, of 1 million. So we've already flown past that. Yes. So, you know, and it's difficult to know with the stats at the moment because we haven't wrapped up anything yet. We're still midway through, in a way. You know, we wraps up tomorrow. So there'll be a lot of post work in terms of putting those things together. But, you know, in terms of into games events, and, you know, we were doing a kind of smaller range of events than you guys. But we pulled together an event called Portfolio Pit Stop, where it was a kind of public portfolio review on Twitter, and we got 40 industry staff to spend various points of the day on Saturday 27th of March, basically giving top level portfolio advice to people live on Twitter, who would then post their thing. And we had I think we had over 400 portfolios submitted on that day, you know, across Twitter. And, you know, that's and pretty much every one of those got really, really good feedback, and that alone is a huge success from our side. And I think it was a proof of concept for us as well. It's like, right, well, we're definitely doing that again. You know, and that was in itself was a really great thing about Games Careers Week, because it gives people a little bit of a chance to try things with maybe a bit of extra PR push around them, you know. And so we've now got a new program that didn't cost loads to run, but had a really big impact. And so we're definitely doing more of that. We also did a poster for secondary schools, a careers poster for secondary schools, which we'd been asked for by careers people for ages, you know, for in secondary schools for a long, long time. And so we finally got around to doing one of those and released that. And that's had 300 downloads from schools for print. And I didn't even know what the reach of that is, because that's an A1 poster in a school corridor. and I think that it's old school, but the reach is big, it's huge, but it's kind of hard to be tangible with that kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of reach and a lot of cool stuff that's going to be happening from this that it might be difficult for us to evaluate, but feels really good. So
oh, it's fantastic. I mean, I know the website, the last time I looked was a couple of days ago, and we well over 20,000 visitors, which, I mean, given from scratch, from an idea in, you know, late November through to us, you know, here at the GamesEd Summit culminating this new festival, pretty good going. And I know that we've had nearly 3 times as many attendees to the GamesEd Summit as a result. And Andy, I know you've done a whole load of new events, haven't you?
Yeah. So we're still going to be finding the exact numbers, obviously, but I know that, I mean, Grads and Games, we ran our student conference on Monday this week, and we had a huge turnout for that. We had over 1,500 people throughout the day attend, which is just incredible, with a really good lineup of speakers. And then we ran 2 brand new events on Tuesday, side by side, which I don't know why we thought that was a good idea. Why run Why run one event on one day? We can just do 2. But we ran those. We ran something called Career Connector, which was it was our version of a careers fair, which also offered one-to-ones between students and studios based on a kind of profile matching system. And we ran a university open day where we had essentially we had a load of universities. We think we had 20 in the end, 20 universities, and then we invited in a load of students at college and level and below, those who haven't gone to uni yet and are thinking about it, and they had the opportunity to come in and talk to 20 different unis that all do games courses about the games courses. So when they are starting to think about UCAS, maybe next year or in a few months, then they've already had those conversations rather than having to travel up and down the country to go to loads of different open days. They can do it all in one place. And we had, I think on those days, we had about 600 or so students across the 2 of those. So we've seen some really good, really good return on everything. And I think, I know we're going to come on to 22 in a minute, but I think we're definitely, as we manage to grow this further and as awareness becomes more, I think we'll be able to grow. If we do the same events next year, I'd expect them to grow again.
Well, I think, I mean, it has gone really well, and I think more than we could have hoped, actually. I think I remember writing the slide with some of those targets and really pulling numbers out of the air and thinking, well, let's set a target for us all to shoot at. But I think I don't want this to sound too self-congratulatory, because in fact, this wouldn't be there. This wouldn't have worked if it wasn't for all those organizations that actually stepped up and ran events, joined in the events that we already set out. And it echoes something I said a bit earlier about the mentoring scheme. The mentoring talk with the various different mentoring schemes, like Into's mentoring scheme and also Limit Break, is that it's a very generous sector, and that there are people who want to give their time, who want to give stuff back, and there are a number of those mentors were talking quite passionately about how this sector has given them a career, and they felt like they wanted to give something back. And what we've tried to do with Games Careers Week is to sort of harness that. So I want to say just a massive thank you to all the different organisations that have been involved, not just Into and Grads and Games, but all of the organisations that have then got involved in all of those programmes. I really hope we can do even more next year. Let's talk about 2022. What are the plans? Put you on the spot.
We're talking about it, so you know, you're in public space. Yes. I don't know. I mean, like, I guess, yeah. I mean, I'd like to see more public forum engagement in the process leading up to it. Definitely. I know we'd spoken briefly about trying to use it as a way of helping fund other work that people were doing. So maybe small grassroots projects across the UK, you know, with not huge amounts of money, but enough that would make a difference for them to run the event. So, you know, 200 quid, 300 quid here, you know, across the country, you know, focusing on, you know, parts of the UK that maybe wouldn't be as open to understanding about the game sector, you know, so really trying to grow those areas rather than focusing on the clusters necessarily. So I'd really like to see some more work in there, and probably in schools as well. You know, I mean, I think that we, you know, for whatever reason, you know, obviously the timings this year, we tried to get to a point where there was a bit of school there, but a lot of schools were closed for a lot of Games Careers Week and couldn't deliver anything. So how, you know, what could we do to counter that next year? And, you know, how can we get schools involved at an earlier stage and get them in kind of embedded in to do something, anything, you know, even if it's just to watch a live stream that we stream out to as many schools as possible, you know, that kind of thing. So that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah,
Andy, what do you think?
I think certainly the mainstream angle, I think, is something that I'm really confident we'd be able to do a lot more of next year. And we were limited by time and you know, and resources and everything this year, and we did really well. And we talked about, you know, what Shift 6 did in terms of getting us in places. And I think there could be a lot more next year in the run up to it. Certainly, now that we've got you know, 11 months to get our act together. So I think I'm excited by that, and excited by kind of, yeah, how big we could grow this, and how big in the mainstream it could be grown. If my mum and dad see it in the newspaper or something, they're like, okay, that's really cool, because they know nothing about games. So, you know, if they then see it on the news or something and they hear about it, and then it's something we're involved in, I'm like, okay, now we're reaching out really to the wider public. That could be great. That, as well as just, you know, I think the knock on would be hopefully that all of the organisations that have done something over the last week, whether they be universities, studios, schools, hopefully they've had a positive experience, and we can then get more to take part again next year. You know, more time to plan more events, plan bigger events, and you know, what you want is at the, you know, at the start of the week next year to be to be able to log onto the website as a 17-year-old student and go, okay, I can go to 30 different events which are relevant to me this week. These are all the times and dates, and you fill out a full schedule of stuff that you can go and do and see. Yeah, I think the expansion, I think the potential for expansion is really exciting.
I mean, it sounds pretty exciting to me. I would back all of those, and I'm not quite ready to announce, but there's definitely progress towards the Declan, your lovely idea of providing grants. And one of the things that sort of struck me over the last couple of days, and some of the media that I've done, is that there are definitely sort of pockets of resistance to the idea that games are a viable career. And I think that, in a way, I think that's what you were kind of referring to, Declan, is there's just some communities which are really hard to break into. But the good news is that we have got representatives of those communities in the games industry who are passionate and driven, and who want to be role models. And I think there are ways that we can reach those specific communities with events targeted to them. So I'm really looking forward to the next pivotal couple of weeks at my end. But I think also, I mean, we didn't have a sponsor this year, and I think there's a really big opportunity for organisations and brands to get involved with something that is going to go to the next level in terms of its scale. I totally agree on the schools front. I think that schools are quite sort of slow moving, and of course, not only slow moving, but they are in a degree of crisis at the moment, in that they're still trying to navigate COVID and all the secondary schools with all of the testing. And so, you know, it's a very difficult time, but give them enough notice and give them enough materials. And I think that we could have a program that is really right for those schools. And I think that the final thing on my wish list, and I do bear in mind, anyone listening, these aren't kind of solid promises that are definitely going to happen, but I hope that we can address, is that I would love to see us being able to for the gamescareersweek.org site to start to take an individual's progress and chart that through the different events that are running through Games Careers Week, possibly in the run up to and after Games Careers Week, that person can then say, they can pull out some kind of certificate or some kind of record to say, I went to these events and I did all of that. Because if there's one thing I take from all of the inspirational game studios talking about how you stand out, is that that passion is so important. And what better indicator for a studio that you've got somebody who's been to this Games Jam, has been to this careers fair, has been to this conference, has been to this portfolio review, has been to all of these different events to show, I really want that career in games. So I think we've got some bold ambitions for next year. I think we want to take it up an order of magnitude, don't we? And reach way more people. And I think we're really saying that if all of you guys out there can come along with us and help us out again, then please do. We'll be in touch. To all of those who've been running events, we're going to be in touch over the next week or so to ask for you to share your reach. Because I think it's really important that this, cobbled together, very quickly developed festival has actually had some quite considerable success in a really short amount of time. And so we really need to get a sense as to how many people you all reached. And also I would say that if you've attended the GamesEd Summit, we're about to, again, at the same time, we're going to send out a survey which asks you about the GamesEd Summit and if your organizations, about your organization, so that we've got some data points to assess what is the sort of state of the industry, what is the state of education at the moment for games education. And if you attended and have got ideas about what you would like to see us do both at the GamesEd Summit, but also during Games Careers Week, please tell us, keep an eye out for that. And finally, where all of these sessions are being videoed, and so we will post these up on social media, on YouTube, and on the Games Education Summit site on the BGI page in the next couple of weeks. So I think I'm going to bring this session to a close, and we're about to go into the very final session of the day, which is the conference wrap, where we have 4 or 5 speakers who are going to take the temperature of the event over 2 days and share their thoughts as to how everything has gone, and also looking forward to the Games Education Summit 2022, what are the kind of things that they would like to see. And that's a Q&A session, so please do join us at 4:15. We'll see you then, and thanks very much, Declan and Andy. Pleasure working with you.
Cheers.
Pleasure, it's great.